Oi, Júlia. Tá me ouvindo? Júlia? Oi, Júlia. Tá me ouvindo? Hum, Tendo com lag o meu. Júlia? Oi, Júlia. Tá me ouvindo? Não era lag, era o canal do YouTube. O seu, o seu não tá funcionando. Não sei o que tá acontecendo, mas você tá a câmera off, tá como se não tivesse. Júlia, você tá me ouvindo?
Oi, agora eu tô te ouvindo.
Ah, bom, não sei o que tinha acontecido aí. Tudo bom?
É, tudo bem. Hoje, não sei o que aconteceu, que o computador caiu no meio de uma meeting que eu estava também, enfim, internet talvez esteja ruim hoje aqui.
Tá bom, não se preocupa. Se estiver ruim, eu vou. De qualquer forma, eu vou te fazer co-host aqui e
Tá.
sim, você tem coisa. Também vou fazer o Esteban quando ele entrar e o Tom por via da
Uhum.
dúvida. Vou ter que fazer o término, né, quando ele chegar, porque para ele poder, né, usar o. Ele tem um PowerPoint. Make co-host aí, velho. É, isso, deve ser tranquilo, não tem. A única coisa que rolou é que o Tom preferiu não ter o Luiz Felipe. Opa, te perdi? Te perdi.
Oi, fui eu que caí ou foi o chat que caiu? É a minha
Não
internet,
sei.
né?
Eu acho que é a sua internet, porque eu tava te
A sua
vendo.
tava boa, né?
Eu
É,
acho que eu
putz,
tô
que
bem.
droga, logo.
Então, onde eu possa ver no YouTube, acho que foi você que caiu. Não sei se, deixa eu ver se você continua co-host ou não. Acho que você continua co-host. Você
Deixa eu tentar o Wi-Fi de um outro provedor que eu tenho, que não é
tá
muito
bom.
bom, mas talvez seja melhor do que ficar refém desse.
Bom, esperando aí o Ciro, olha, ele confirmou ontem, o Ciro tá aí esperando, mas o Temi, putz, ver se ele confirmou ontem. Espero que ele entre cedo. Pedi para ele entrar mais cedo, mas
Uhum.
que eu não sei como ele é de coisa eletrônica. Ele tá com 84 anos, né? Pra 80,
É, né?
vai fazer 85.
Caramba,
Então,
muito legal isso.
não é que ele é um menino.
É,
É, então, essas coisas você nunca sabe,
é
pessoal.
verdade.
Essas coisas de internet. E Zoom mais ainda por cima, que ele não estava dando aula na época que isso aqui virou. A gente fazia muita entrevista por Zoom antes
Uhum,
da pandemia. Então eu já usava Zoom, estava até no meu computador, por pura sorte.
uhum,
Vira aqui, né? Da Pierre.
uhum.
Okay. Mas caiu aqui o negócio.
Hi, Professor.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Professor? You are muted. Let me unmute you. No. No, you're not muted. But for some reason, I cannot hear you.
Now it's great, the image, Professor.
No, but can you hear him? I cannot hear you. It says you're not muted. Can you hear us, Professor? We cannot hear you. I
We
cannot hear you.
can't, yeah, we can't.
We can hear you. We can try to. Can you try to get out and get back in? If not, just type here because I cannot. Let me. I don't think it's a problem of the meeting, so we both can hear each other. We can hear, Professor.
No.
Yeah, it's on your end. So can you? I think that best is if you try to get out and rejoin the meeting.
Eu acho que ele não está ouvindo a gente também.
Não. Typing. We don't hear. You have to type. Eu escrevi para ele, mas ele acho que ele não está vendo.
É. Não, acho que ele saiu.
Deixa eu mandar um e-mail para ele.
É, melhor. Talvez seja melhor.
We cannot hear you. I send you an email, Professor. Hola, Esteban. Sí, ahora te busco. Espera un segundo. We're having trouble. We cannot hear Professor Tamin. And I don't think he saw my messages to him asking him to get in and out. I sent an email. But we cannot hear you. Can you guys hear us? You're muted. Unmute.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
And I unmuted him too. I don't know what's going on. I'm asking him to rejoin. Can you rejoin? But I don't think he can hear us.
Have you got his phone number?
No, I don't. And he doesn't seem to be the messages
In the chat.
in the chat. I sent him several messages, and so
Does he have your phone number?
I don't think he does. I didn't send it to him. This was an oversight. I should have.
Can you do an email to him?
I did just send him.
Okay. He must be able to see you. Maybe do some ear thing. He's not showing as joined. Oh, yes, he is PT.
Yeah, no, he is there. He's
Yeah,
here.
he is.
Yes, he's here. Yeah. I think it's a problem with his
He must have his
sound. Yeah, the microphone or something.
He cannot hear us either. So otherwise he would be responding.
Yeah, he's not acknowledging, yeah.
I send you an email.
Can you see?
Can you see? Phone number.
Go up with the phone. Have you got a portable phone?
Yeah. I send you.
We have a response.
Yeah. I saw it.
Keep holding it up. Yeah, good. He's calling.
Yep. Hi, Professor Tamin. Yeah, no, I think you're not. So we are not hearing you at all. So what I was suggesting is, can you leave the meeting and rejoin? There must be some sort of problem with your connection. No, not at all. Yes, that's the thing. So we couldn't hear you. And I was trying to pass you the phone, or the chat, my phone over the chat. So I think the best is if you log out and then log in again. And okay.
But yes, also it may be a volume issue on his end.
It could be a volume issue on his end. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm still here, Professor. I don't know if you can hear me. And you should be there again. Let me find you because there are many people waiting, so I have to find you here and let you in. Okay, let me find you then. Yes, I'm trying to find it. There are many. The problem is that at this point there are many people waiting.
He's
Here,
the very last one on my list. If you're
Yeah.
using Zoom, he's the
Yeah.
very last one. It's sequential.
Yeah.
I'm letting you in. I'm letting you in.
Yeah. There we go.
So let's see if it works.
He's muted, unmuted. Yeah.
Can you speak, Professor? And we see if we hear you from. I think we're hearing you through the phone. Let me just take the sound off here for a second. Can you speak again? Yeah. No, we're getting you through the phone. Can you guys hear him when he talks on the phone?
No.
Yes, but it's.
Yeah, we can only hear you through the phone. So
Yeah.
probably if you go to your microphone, there should be something that you have to get the microphone of the computer because we're not getting it.
The microphone is connected and on.
Yeah, the camera is fine, but it's possible that the computer is not picking up the. So if you go to the little microphone symbol in the Zoom meeting, you can sort of there is a little arrow, and if you push that arrow, it will have several things that it could be just the computer system or SAMA system, and you should click on one of those because I think it's not picking up your microphone, or it may be just the volume.
Matthias, it may be on the very bottom of the screen in the Microsoft command. There's a sort of loudspeaker. He needs to check that is not on 0.
I'm trying to get the output level.
On the Microsoft screen, on the lower right-hand side corner, there's a microphone or a speaker that has to be on above 0.
Oh, the device is not working.
Yes.
So it's working. It's working.
Now it's working.
It's working.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can hear you.
What?
We can hear you. I disconnected.
we can.
We can hear you. It's fine.
Can you hear us, Professor?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Yes,
we can. Yes.
you can hear me now.
Yes, we can, Professor. That's great. We can hear you perfectly.
Okay,
So, and I allow you to share the screen if you need for your PowerPoint, okay? For your,
okay,
so whenever you want to start sharing, that would be fine. I'm going to start recording if that's okay with you. And I'm just gonna briefly say a couple of words, and then Julia will take over, and she'll be the host. So first of all, sorry for the little delay. We were having a bit of trouble with the microphone on the other end. So we're getting, I'll give a little bit of time for other people to get in. It was all kind of a sudden. So what we're going to do, it's very simple. We're going to have just a very brief comments on the 10th anniversary of the journal by the 3 editors that are here. And then Julia will present Professor Tamin's talk, and there'll be brief comments by Tom and by myself. And at the end, for those that want to stay, there'll be some announcements that we want to make about the journal and the future of the the journal. So this is the 10th anniversary, so I don't want to talk too much on this, so I'm going to be brief. It's the 10th anniversary of the Journal of the Review of Keynesian Economics. The idea of the journal started a long time ago, 20 years ago, with Louis-Philippe Rochon at the Kalamazoo College. We had an idea of a journal. And 10 years ago, he approached me when the Journal of Post-Keynesian Economics was in a transition, and Paul Davidson was coming, down as the editor of that journal, about the possibility of starting a journal, which in his idea was something specifically related to post-Keynesian economics, post-Keynesian monetary economics. And I suggested that if we did that, we should bring Tom Paley into the journal, and that's exactly what we did back then. So me and Tom, we sat and talked at a conference that was organized by Jamie Galbraith at the University of Texas, actually at the airport in Austin, and came up with the idea of a broader sort of journal that dealt with Keynesian issues and was ecumenical, bringing all the Keynesian. We invited, I should say, Robert Solow to be on the board. He sent us a letter. He sent me a letter in which he says that the objective of the journal, he accepted, he's a member of the journal, I should say, of the editorial board. And he said that the project was a cultural project, and indeed it was. And so the idea was to have a journal that was of all Keynesians, hence no non-hyphenated Keynesians, as James Tobin once said at the New School, and Wynne Godley, when I told him that story, says, I'm a non-hyphenated Keynesian too, so hence the Godley-Tobin lecture that we also sponsored. And so it was in that spirit that we created the journal, and now it's 10 years later, and I think we have tried to live to that standard of accepting all sorts of Keynesians, and to some extent the opportunity of listening today to Professor Temin, who has published in our journal, is associated to that sort of ecumenical, open Keynesian view of the school of thought. Tom, I don't know if you want to.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. And I want to reiterate my Matthias's greetings to all the participants. Actually, my understanding is that we have registered participants from North America, Latin America, Europe, Asia, Australia. So I guess it would be a good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone. It's really kind of amazing. And I also want to thank Professor Peter Temin for agreeing to give this lecture celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Review of Keynesian Economics. I want to thank Matthias and Esteban, who are my fellow co-editors. I think not only have we built ROKE into a globally recognized and growing journal, it's been a really great pleasure working with both of you. I mean, this has really been a genuine collaboration. Lastly, I want to thank Alan Sturmer, who's the executive editor at Edward Elgar, which publishes the journal. Alan has been consistently generous and supportive of the ROKE project, and his support has been essential for its success. Since today's event is an anniversary celebration, I'm going to briefly review ROKE's history and what has been accomplished. I'll repeat a little bit of what Matthias has just said. Plans for the journal were formally set afoot in late 2011, and the first issue was published in autumn 2012. The founding co-editors were Louis-Philippe Rochon, Matthias Vernengo, and myself. And the first issue has a founding statement by the co-editors, which lays out the motivation for establishing the journal, its scope, and its purpose. And the statement is on ROKE's website. And I think it has aged very well, and there's not much in it that I would change today. And so I encourage people to read it if they get an opportunity. Louis-Philippe Rochon was instrumental in the journal's creation. He first approached Matthias with the idea of creating a new journal. Matthias said that actually predates 2011. It goes back to Kalamazoo. And he also provided the business contact to Edward Elgar. So without Louis-Philippe's entrepreneurial energy, ROKE would not have come into being. That said, I think the name and the scope of ROKE are substantially attributable to Matthias and myself, and there's a fun story behind that. As Matthias mentioned, in November 2011, we were attending a conference organized by Jamie Galbraith at the University of Texas on the Euro crisis. And Matthias invited me to discuss Louis Philippe's suggestion to co-found and co-edit a new journal. So after the conference was over, we met at one of those plastic cafes in Austin Airport. And Louis Philippe's proposal, as I remember it, was for a new journal. Yeah.
By the way, Jamie just got in.
Oh, great. Okay. So, well, Jamie there should be credited too, because we were invited to his conference that put us together to make it happen. Anyway, Louis Philippe's proposal was for a new journal that was to be called something like the Post-Keynesian Journal of Endogenous Money and Banking. And I told Matthias that I was not interested in participating in a journal on money and banking, but I was interested in participating in a journal on macroeconomics that sought to change the climate of thinking and the direction of thought. If you recall, this was in 2011, and the global economy was still feeling the aftershocks of the 2008 financial crisis. And my view, which I still hold, was that the economics profession bears a substantial responsibility for that crisis because of the economic theory and policies that it had peddled over the prior 4 decades. And given that, I thought there was need for a journal that would provide a platform for challenging and changing the economic status quo. And that journal would be an enduring piece of social intellectual capital. Matthias agreed with that, and we then started thinking about possible names. So I proposed the Journal of Keynesian Economics, but Matthias pointed out the acronym for that would be JOKE. So thanks,
That
Matthias.
was the problem that Paul Davidson had too.
Okay. Well, thanks, Matthias. You saved us for a second time. We then both sort of simultaneously proposed review of Keynesian economics, ROKE, and the rest is history. Now, one of the features of the ROKE project has been its pluralist disposition. And as Matthias said, Robert Solow wrote very approvingly of that when he accepted to be a board member, describing ROKE's task as one of affecting cultural change in economics. I have always emphasized the need for a non-denominational approach that counters sectarian tendencies, which I think are far too common in economics. I'm not pluralist for the sake of pluralism, but I am pluralist because it's the only intellectually honest position. If applied with integrity, the net through which we filter economic ideas is not capable of winnowing ideas down to just one school of thought. Consequently, we have to live with many. That does not mean anything goes, but it does mean multiple positions may pass the tests of logical and empirical consistency. And my belief in pluralism is echoed in my own theoretical thinking. And actually, over the last decade, I have become much less enthusiastic about Keynes's general theory. And with that in mind, I'm very keen to hear Professor Temin's lecture this afternoon, titled Keynes Then and Now, which also seems to suggest an evolving understanding. So to close, please, all who are here this afternoon, continue supporting ROKE. I hope you enjoy today's lecture, and I hope you continue participating in future ROKE-sponsored events. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Tom. Esteban, I don't know if you want to add something before we let Julia present Professor Temin.
No, I think just go on and I'll talk later. That's fine.
Okay, so Julia, if you want, the floor is yours. And
okay, thank you, Matthias. So welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. So this symposium is to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Review of Keynesian Economics. My name is Julia Braga. I'm professor of Fluminense Federal University in Brazil. I'm speaking here from Rio de Janeiro. So it's an honor to moderate this symposium and to receive Professor Peter Temin. So he's going to deliver a lecture about Keynes now, then and now. And then commentaries will be provided by the co-editors Thomas Pelli and Matthias Bernenko. So As is well known, Professor Peter Temi is the doyen of economic history in American academia, and he's currently Great Professor Emeritus of Economics at MIT and former head of Economics Department. Professor Temi's research contributions include books and articles on a variety of topics such as industrialization, slavery, history of ancient Rome, and inequality. And most important for our symposium today is his notorious contribution in the macroeconomic history with his books, Did Monetary Forces Cause the Great Depression, 1976, where he argues that it was the decline in consumption in aggregate demand, not monetary contraction, that was to blame for the crisis. There are also the book entitled Lesson from the Great Depression, 1989, Keynes and Useful Economics for the World Economy, 2014, with David Vines. And there is also an article on ROKE entitled Keynes and the European Economy, 2016. His most recent books are The Vanishing Mid-Class, Prejudice and Power in a Dual Economy, which was the Financial Times Best Book 2017 and received the Prose Award in Economics 2018. And the newest book, Never Together, The Economic History of a Segregate America, has been just published this year. So without further delay, I will give floor to Professor Temi. Thank you very much, Professor, for accepting the invitation to this lecture. Professor, can you hear us?
Professor Temi? Let me call him.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Oh, we can hear you now, I think. I don't know if you were hearing us. So you if you can share your screen and start the talk.
okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can,
Yes.
Professor.
Can hear you.
Okay, this is going to be mostly by diagrams. So I'm going to share the screen. Okay, good. 21. Here we go. Okay. And I can now see this. Okay. And this is just at the first an introduction to the curves that we use. And equilibrium is, of course, where supply equals demand, and so on. And so this is the supply and demand for a competitive firm, where the firm doesn't have much effect on the demand, and it's the supply equals the demand. And these two curves you will see with different meanings all through the talk. Okay, so the Keynesian cross is where savings equals investment and government spending. And so that's equilibrium. And so on. Okay. And this is the paradox of thrift. That is, if people decide they'd like to serve less, what happens? It goes from A to B and then to D. That it's not a uniform connection through there, but by saving more, you actually decrease national income. Okay, good. Okay, and this is now the substance of Keynesian thought, which is the IS, that's investment and savings, equals LM, which is the money supply for that, and that's the entrance, and so on. So let's go on. A monetary expansion would be to shift the curve to the right, and that would go down for national income. And a fiscal expansion would increase money adding. A fiscal expansion would expand national income. Okay, and that's the basic thing. And this is a case that we've experienced in a kind of in the 80s, a little bit, where we had essentially a zero lower bound on the interest rate. Of course, we're very far from that at the moment, where the interest rates are very high. Very good there. And this is the accounting that you can see that that getting their savings has to equal investment, but government spending. And then in the open economy, S minus I, that is the private savings, government savings, foreign savings, have to have to be equal to government minus transactions and to exports minus imports. And so that's the concept there. And here is the aggregate supply and aggregate demand. And this is the basic Keynesian. It was actually done by Hicks, but it's the Keynesian novel for this. That's the summary of the Keynesian or Hicksian invention. And the Great Depression was with aggregate demand going down. And African supply and African demand in the long run is there as the demand goes, but in the long run, the aggregate supply is fixed. So you can see how national income will change. So now we get to the criticism of Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman, in the 1968 presidential address of the American Economic Association, asserted that only monetary policy should be used to stable, there's an extra I there, the economy. He was against Keynesian fiscal policy and also against public schools for it. And so Friedman split macroeconomics between Keynesians and austerity. Albert Alessina and others published Alessino Austerity, published Austerity in 1919. The first sentence of the book says, the term austerity indicates a policy of sizable reduction of government deficits and stabilization of government debt achieved by means of spending cuts or tax increases, or both. Now, Alessina and his authors used a simple Keynesian model to ground their theory. In other words, even anti-Keynesians are indebted to Keynes. There are now models of modern monetary theorem that formalize this concept and argument, this complex argument, and current research tends to work on MMT. Where are we? Unemployment is not caused in the labor market, contrary to attacks on unions moment. We were recently in a liquidity trap. That's in the 80s. Keynes and austerity define measures at this time. Democrats are Keynesian, and today news shows Keynesian policies work as the Fed has caused inflation to slow down. Republicans are austerity minded. The recent election was about, the effect of the election is out. However it comes out will affect our government actions. And this is a quote from Richard Koo, who is a Japanese author. He happens to be a friend of mine, who does a series of memos, which I urge you all to subscribe to. Macroeconomics is still a very young science. It began when John Maynard Keynes, who recognized the fallacy of composition problems in the economy, conceived the concept of aggregate demand in the 19th economy. And that comes from his pursued economy, which is well worth reading, which is a book by Koo, which is very, very good. Okay. And finally, thinking like an economist. An economist abstracts, simplifies, abstracts from reality, use models, and ask about causation, focus on choices, and consider their effects. Okay, so let me stop sharing and urge anybody to ask questions.
Thank you, Professor. What a unique moment to have you
I can't
here.
hear you.
No? Matthias, maybe calling him
I
again.
think
I
it's
don't
the
know.
volume, Professor. I think you have an issue with the volume. Let me call you. Yes, I think we're having an issue with your volume in your computer, so that's why you cannot hear us.
What?
Oh, no. Hello, Professor?
Yes,
Yes, we can hear you, but I think you cannot hear us because of the volume in your computer. So
yes.
you have to increase the volume there. If not, I
What?
can sort of relay questions to you. Because we can hear you well. So it's the volume in your computer that it's an issue. That's why you cannot hear us.
Yes. Okay. Good. Okay, so let's put this.
Let's see somebody else. Julia, can you ask him a question and see if he can hear you?
Hi, Professor. Are you hearing us? Can you hear us?
Can you hear her?
Yes, again. Julia, go again.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor, for your presentation. Can
I
you
still
hear
can't
me?
hear.
No. Okay.
He was picking up from the phone. Let me call him again.
Yes.
I'm calling you, Professor. I'm calling you again. Yes, hi. Oh, no.
Oh, I think it's simpler you maybe moderate by the phone.
He is co-host. That's why he was able to
Yeah.
present. So I'm calling you, Professor. Let me call you so you can hear us through the phone. Can you hear me?
My phone,
Yes, I'm calling.
6174.
Yeah, no, I have it. I'm calling you.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, so you can hear us. I think that the best is you get the, we can hear you. So we will get the questions, and the comments. We'll do it, with the open phone. Can you? And I think you'll be able to, if you got Julia before, I think you'll be able to hear it through my phone.
Yes.
okay.
Okay. So maybe Tom want to make his comments now?
Yes.
You want?
Okay, Julia.
Yes, Thomas, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, when I was in graduate school in the 1980s, we all had to read Peter Temen's book about the Great Depression, which was the Keynesian response to the Friedman and Schwartz claim about the causes of the Great Depression. And
Good.
the dispute was very much interpreted through the lens of the ISLM diagram, which you've referred to in your talk this afternoon. Milton Friedman's position was associated with an adverse disturbance to the LM schedule, making the case that a monetary disturbance triggered the Great Depression. And your
Right.
own position, I recall, was interpreted in terms of an adverse disturbance to the IS schedule, which was the sort of spending hypothesis. From that, I have some comments and then questions. Maybe I'll do the questions first. Is one, do you still interpret the Great Depression in those terms? And then,
No,
yeah, let's do
no,
that.
I don't agree with the Friedman and Schwartz argument on that. And I gave a seminar at Chicago University where everybody yelled at me and was quiet. So that's the things are, and I have a book on that too. So feel free to look that book up.
Yeah.
The causes of the First Depression. Yes.
Now, let's roll the clock forward to the financial crisis of 2008, and then the stagnation that set in afterwards. And many people have said that, well, there's quite a resemblance between events in 2008 and events in 1929. But this time there was no Great Depression because we had the lessons of Keynesianism to guide us, and we really stepped on both. Well, we had a very vigorous monetary response combined with what for the time was a very vigorous fiscal response. So in hindsight, not just in hindsight, at the time, people were arguing for a yet bigger response. So would you interpret 2008 as being similar structurally to the 1929 depression, and just we avoided it because of a policy response? Or was there anything structurally different between the two episodes?
Well, distinguishing between causing a depression and not, or a recession, and not doing this successfully is what Powell is trying to do right at this instant. So you can see by watching the news how well he succeeds, because he is trying very hard to do that, to get there without a recession. And so he's being very cautious in what he does. Okay, good. But that's a good question.
But what about 2008? Powell is operating now. What about 2008? Because the situation Powell is dealing with now is one where we're at proximate full employment. There's inflation due to which people have different views about. It's somewhat different from 2008 when we were facing a meltdown of the financial system. And I guess that's the essential question. Why did the system melt down in 2008? Was it financial, or was it problems in the real economy?
Yes, our situation is a little different than that, because we have a booming economy at the moment, and Powell is trying to stop it, but he's being very cautious. But he does not want to get a recession as we had in 2001 and 2002.
Okay, well, I'll ask one more question. My last question, I'm kind of intrigued about your response to. When I was learning macroeconomics, ISLM was the framework which we interpreted the economy. I mean, obviously, the sophisticated versions of it with many assets, more sophisticated behavioral functions, taking account of stock flow implications. But it always seemed to me that the model suffered from an excessive and artificial separation of the financial and real sectors. The LM schedule representing equilibrium in the financial sector, and the IS representing equilibrium in the goods sector. And though, of course, a general equilibrium is obtained using both of them, they are very separated from each other. And from my point of view, as a young Keynesian economist, that seemed to me a problem. And it always seemed to me that that might be the core of the difference between your position and that of Milton Friedman, that maybe there was more common ground than either acknowledged if one thought that the two sectors were integrated with each other and very much co-moved together. And I wonder if you think that could be a resolution of your dispute of 50 years ago with Milton Friedman along those lines?
Well, the division was a Keynesian idea at in New York when they were doing things for that. And I disagree with you. I think having the separate agencies gets more people involved in the discussion of what to do about things. So it actually is a benefit to having all of these separate agencies, because it then gives more wisdom to the occasion. Okay, but thank you for the question.
Well, thank you. Matthias, why don't you take over now?
You have to unmute, Matthias.
Yeah, the most famous phrase in the last 3 years. You're muted. So I'm sorry, Professor. So I think that a lot was said by Jude in the introduction and by Tom in his questions and comments. I think what I can add is, and then have a question for you, is that I see your work not just the consumption book. Did monetary causes caused the Great Depression? I'm obviously watching the title. That was the classic story of consumption, but you also provided in your little book on the gold standard and the effects of the gold standard on the depression, which I think was the sort of canonical for a long while understanding of the causes of the Great Depression. And by the 2000s, with the book with David Vines, you sort of incorporated the lower bound or zero bound interest rate or liquidity trap story that Krugman sort of brought back. So in many ways, you have all of the faces of the Keynesian responses to mainstream neoclassical or more monetarist sort of views of the Great Depression. My question to you: you were a student of Charles Kindleberger. And I think one of the interesting things is that Kindleberger has a different question and reply to what caused the Great Depression. In his 1973 book, what he says is that the deep causes of the Great Depression were associated to the collapse of British hegemony and the gold standard. And that in that broader sort of context, you have to look at all of those things: the collapse of consumption, the imperfections in the financial markets and interest rates, and in the imperfections of the gold standard itself in that particular period. So what would be your take about your supervisor's view of the Great Depression?
Yes, yes, Tom Ferguson and I published an article called Made in Germany. And so they ran the first recession first for their big 7 banks. And then it spread to France and England and the United States, where it was a bit compounded by the Fed's intervention.
Well, thank you, Professor. Should we open to questions? I don't know if we. Oh, I have to admit more people. If somebody, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll see if we have a couple of more questions. I think we have Esteban here wants to make a question. So Esteban, unmute yourself.
Yeah, Esteban has a question.
Yes.
Yes, I have one question. In Friedman's book on history of monetary.
I can't hear it.
Sorry, in Friedman's book on the monetary history of the United States, banks play a very important role and yet
What
in
is the question?
my question is, can you hear me?
Make the question. I'm going to relay it to you, Professor, as soon as he makes it. So what is the question, Stefan?
The question is, in the history of monetary, history of monetary history of the United States, Friedman and Schwartz play a very important role in terms of the Great Depression. Yet in the monetary theory, banks play no role whatsoever. So I would like to know if he has a sort of an opinion on this issue, why banks are taken all of a sudden out of the monetary transmission mechanism.
So can you hear me, Professor?
Yes.
So his question is the following. So Friedman and Schwartz have a significant role for the monetary contraction in explaining the Great Depression, and yet when you look at monetarist sort of theory, banks play no significant role in the transmission mechanism. So do you have any sort of criticism, or can you account for this sort of incoherence in the monetarist explanation and the theoretical sort of underpinning of their explanation of the Great Depression?
Yes. No, the the introduction of the Keynesian view was really in the 30s, and it was used well in the 1930s, although as Clark, who was then the head, recently he died, but he was head of the department at that time, wrote an article saying that it was not as expansionary as Keynes would have wanted. And so the Depression hung on for most of a decade for that reason, because it didn't work, because the fall in demand was so sharp that having what you needed was a strong fiscal policy. But in that period, he couldn't get through Congress a strong physical thing, as Biden is having trouble getting through his help to the poor in the US today. Okay. Is there any more? Yes,
Yes,
two
Matthias,
more.
you have to unmute, Matthias.
Yes,
Amitabha.
Amitabha and then Mark. And let's see if you can hear them, Professor. If not, I'll relay the questions. Amitabha? Oh, I have to unmute you, don't I? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Professor Temin, it was a great pleasure hearing you. I attended some of your classes when I was a graduate student, so it's great to see you again. I wanted to ask you a somewhat more general question, that you were primarily economic historian, and unfortunately what has happened is that economic history, among other things, is no longer valued. Now, could you say a few words about that? How has your understanding of this debate about austerity and policies been affected by your sort of economic history view, and what would you recommend to young scholars about the role of theory versus history?
Oh, okay. Well, in the United States, I've written about the Civil War and so on, and then I've written about Europe and the discovery of banks. And the most important thing I've done, judging by the questions I get about it, is the Roman market economy. And that was stimulated by me and a graduate student at Harvard that I am still in communication with. They tried to do that with a regression of 6 variables, which is all that survived in a book on the Russian bread industry for that, but it fit very well, arguing that we had the price and the distance from Rome, and could show it to you, but would take a little while. But it fit very, very well for that, showing that the Romans had a market economy. And that's the title of my book, The Roman Market Economy, if anybody wants to look it up. Okay, thank you.
We're gonna get Mark then now. Mark Satterfield is gonna ask a question now.
Yes, Mark.
We lost Mark. Oh, you have to be unmute. Sorry. There you go.
Thank you, Matthias.
I can't hear him, so you'll have to repeat him then, Matthias.
Okay, if I'm talking to you, Matthias, then I'd be grateful if you would just thank Professor Temin for me. I was also a reader of his book on the Great Depression in the mid-1980s, although as an undergraduate, I will cheekily note. I have a very simple question. Does Professor Temin think that what I'll call the Biden stimulus of spring 2021 was a mistake?
Did you get that, Professor?
What the mistake?
It's the Biden stimulus. Whether you think that was a mistake?
Oh, no, I didn't think that was a mistake. I thought that was good Keynesian policy.
Well, we agree on that, Professor.
Okay, good.
We're among Keynesians.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? I don't know if anybody wants to unmute. Just raise your hand because there are too many still people and I cannot see, but unless anybody. Okay, so I think, Professor, I think that those were the questions. So we truly appreciate your time and coming to give the talk. About Keynes and the future of Keynesian economics. Jamie, you had your hand up? No? Okay. So we have a few announcements to make. I don't know, Esteban, if you want to do those announcements, and we'll move from there. So
yes. Well, the first announcement is that we are planning to publish a book in honor of the contributions of Thomas Paley to economics, titled Debt Dynamics, Financialization and Shared Profits, Essays on Structural Keynesianism. And we hope this book will be published by Edward Elgar. and it will be edited by Matthias, myself, and the list of contributors would be Robert Blecker, Amitav Adop, Jerry Epstein, Eckhart Hein, Ignacio Perrotini, Bob Pollin, Franklin Serrano, Mark Satterfield, which are here, Susan Schroeder, which I think she's always connected, and she's connected.
Franklin's here too. Ignacio's here. There are many here.
Okay, and Engelbert, that's right. And
Harry's here. I think
Stockhammer.
Bob was here. Bob Pollins.
And this is a book in honor of Thomas Paley because he's one of the most prominent and original heterodox economists of his generation. He's the author of one of the first books on post-Keynesian economics, that distribution and the macroeconomics, which was published in 1996, combining three principal strains of macroeconomic theory: the Yale view, Keynesianism, and the Cambridge, UK Calder, and American Davidson, Minsky, and Weintraub post-Keynesianism. And besides being one of the founding editors with Matthias Vernengo, obviously, and Louis Philippe on the review of Keynesian economics, Tom has made very important and seminal contributions to virtually every area in heterodox macroeconomics, including monetary theory and policy, inflation, finance, growth, distribution, and business cycles. And he has argued structural Keynesianism of the need to complement pure macroeconomic policy analysis with a focus on institutions, policy interventions that are needed for an economy to generate productive full employment with income equality in a perspective that's termed structural Keynesianism. Like, demand is just not enough. You have to have the certain conditions, institutional conditions for full employment, sustained full employment, and adequate income distribution. These different chapters that will focus on the book. There's a chapter by Robert Blecker and Mark Satterfield on structural change in the US Philip curve. Then there will be a chapter on inflation and economic growth revisited by Robert Pollin. Then there will be a chapter on the money spigot by Jerry Epstein. Then there will be a chapter on money capitalism, financialization, and well-being by Amitava. Financialization, variety of capitalism, regimes and stagnation tendencies, and stylized Koleskian world model by Eckhart Hein. The relevance of industrial configuration for the development of financial fragility by Susan Schroeder. A theoretical and empirical assessment of Thomas Paley's Murray hypothesis by Ignacio Perrotini and Juan Alberto Vasquez. Structural Keynesianism, institutions and powers by myself, Matthias, and Juan Carlos Moreno. Then mine, the two gaps on the conflict augmented Phillips curve, and the Sraffian super multiplier by Franklin Serrano. And then two types of Minsky's cycles by Engelbert Stockhammer. And I just would like to end by saying that, as far as I know, Tom Paley not only has been one of the most original and prominent contributors to post-Keynesian economics, but he has over the years shown a tremendous amount of intellectual honesty, really, in every piece of work that he has done, and in his attitudes to the different economic theories and points of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Esteban. I'm going to do two very short announcements and then open up to whoever wants to say something about Tom and you know and his contributions. In many ways, I do see the journal as, you know, this idea of non-hyphenated Keynesianism to be represented very well by Tom. One of the other things that I wanted when we did the journal is that, you know, that it was about an idea and not about the people in it, and so that, you know, we had you know, term limits to some extent. So I'm stepping down as one of the editors of ROKE, and Julia, who was very kindly today the co-host host of this event. She will be the next editor of the journal with Tom and with Esteban. So Tom will be fittingly the only lasting, sort of at this point, founding editor to remain in the journal. And the other thing is, for many of you already know, but Professor Stiglitz accepted to be the Joseph Stiglitz will give the Godley-Tobin lecture. We have a few of the I think Jamie's here is the only one that I don't know if we have any other sort of Jamie gave the inaugural Godley-Tobin lecture. We have also Professor Bob Rothorn and Mark Lavoie, so three well-known heterodox economists, but we also had you know, three mainstream authors. So we had Robert Schiller, which was Tom's supervisor, or one of his supervisors. We had also Paul Krugman last year. And who am I missing? I'm missing Stiglitz, probably. So so that's probably it, I think, of those that gave the Godley-Tobin lecture. So if anybody wants to say something, you know, I here have Jamie, so I'm going to mute you, Jamie, and go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to add to the praise of Tom that in particular in recent months, he's just shown exemplary courage in standing up to the Washington views on particularly on foreign policy matters. And I think we should all salute him for doing that. He's an exceedingly rare and important voice on these matters. So thank you, Tom.
Bob, comments?
Yeah, congratulations, Tom. Much deserved. Absolutely. I want to relate three different Tom Pally stories, anecdotes. I first heard about Tom Pally in 1991. I wrote a paper that was in the Journal of Post-Keynesian Economics on endogenous money theory. And I guess it was somewhat controversial because people are still arguing about it. But I had nothing to do with this, but Paul Davidson, I guess, asked Tom to write a comment on my paper. And I think his comment was probably better than my paper. It was certainly an original contribution on its own. It made me think. I think it was largely sympathetic, but it was Tom. It was his own voice, and I think it really helped move ahead this debate that's been going on for the subsequent 30 years. Somewhere in the middle of these debates, I myself kind of faded out. I think it was Randy Ray at one point said, I'd rather watch paint dry than hear another argument by Bob Poland on endogenous money. So that was very
kind.
Yeah. So that's my first story. The second one, I had organized a small conference with Economic Policy Institute on saving and investment in 1995. And among the participants was Tobin, James Tobin, who I guess was one of Tom's advisors. But at the time, I just asked Tobin, because I guess we were searching, I was at UC Riverside at the time. And I asked Tobin, I said, can you give me some names of some of your graduates at Yale who are really very capable at macro, open-minded, and are really committed around issues of social justice. he thought about it and he said, yeah, I can give you one name. One name. That was Tom Pally. So that was my second anecdote. And the third one, I want to echo what Jamie just said with respect to Tom's current writings on the Ukraine war, which I have found extremely insightful. And I should also say, and I've been in touch with Tom about this recently, that my correspondence, which is at this point fairly regular, with two luminaries on US foreign policy issues, Daniel Ellsberg and Noam Chomsky. Both Chomsky and Ellsberg have said to me how important Tom Pally's work is, and they both are citing it regularly. In fact, Ellsberg now, if some of you know Ellsberg, his background is an economist, and he said now he's really starting to read Pally's work in economics as well, and he just got an email from him about 4 days ago thanking me for getting him in touch with Tom Pally. So again, congratulations, Tom, and thank you for all your contributions.
Ignacio.
Yes, thank you. Yes, of course. I'm also, I also agree that this is a very much deserved script in favor of Tom Pally. I mean, Tom, you have made such great contributions in many respects, and of course, you deserve this recognition. I met Tom at the New School. When I decided to go to the New School, I meant to study with Jerry Epstein, but by the time I reached the New School, Jerry had gone. I mean, he left. But I was very lucky. Of course, I love Jerry Epstein, but I was very lucky because I met Tom Pally instead at that time. Now, of course, Tom has helped us understand what's going on in the United States, in Europe, economically and politically. But I want to mention that Tom has also helped us understand what happens in many Latin American economies. Tom is a distinguished member of the editorial board of Investigación Económica, the journal I'm the chief editor of, and Tom is a regular contributor, and he's published very, very interesting papers, very influential papers. And here in Mexico, our students follow Tom Pally's writings. And of course, I want to thank Tom for being a member of our editorial board and also for his contributions to the economic problems of, to the understanding of the economic problems of Latin America. Congratulations, Tom.
Thank you. Yes, Tom has been critical of some ideas of new developmental economics, and those have been very popular in Latin America, for sure. I don't know if anybody else wants to yes, Mark Satterfield. Mark.
Thanks. Well, congratulations, Tom. It's great to be able to say that. I'll even overlook your terrible taste in football teams for a few minutes. So I want to pick up on something that Ignacio, I think, hinted at. I think a lot has been quite rightly said so far about your intellectual contributions. I think we've benefited as a community from your sort of the Tobin-esque inflections that you've brought to some of the familiar debates, in Keynesian and post-Keynesian economics. But I actually want to sort of thank you for your role as a mentor. I know that when I first arrived in the States, it was really very useful to have someone like you a few years ahead of me and in my neck of the woods, you know, as a junior scholar, somebody to sort of look up to and to see, you know, what the expectations and standards were. I still have very fond memories of the seminars that you organized at the New School in the early 90s. I can remember some headlong charges back north along Connecticut 15 at times. But you know what really sticks in the memory apart from that is the attention that you paid to the graduate students. And, I'm sure that there were others at the New School at that time that have memories of your influence there as well. And in some ways, this is sort of a little bit bittersweet because I suppose that turned out to be, or this has turned out to be a path not traveled. But I'm really sort of glad to see that, that you found the outlet through ROKE to sort of continue to help not just contribute intellectually, but also to the sort of organizational development and furtherance and reproduction of the Keynesian tradition. So thanks a lot, Tom, and many congratulations.
Jerry.
Congratulations, Tom. You're somebody who has worked in so many areas of economics, and including just about every area that I've worked in. And it's been kind of a career of chasing after Tom Pally. When I'm working on central bank policy, I look at what you've done and you've already done it, or financialization or modern money theory or anything else. It's been just, I've learned so much from reading your work. And so I want to thank you for all the excellent work you've done in so many areas of economics. Congratulations.
Thank you. I don't know if anybody else wants to say something.
Matthias, can I?
Yes, if nobody else is saying something, I think, Tom, you have the last word.
Well, this is a case where I almost don't need a mute button. I'm totally taken aback. I did not expect, this is a complete surprise. And I cannot tell you how happy I am. This is the people, the collection of people who have contributed, who here this day, make up the vast majority of people who I admire so much in our economics profession. I think of us as a cohort that's done a tremendous amount together. Jerry, I get my inspiration on the political economy of central banking from you, who I got took the lead on, and seeing how politicized central bank policy is, and the need to put political interests in there. And of course, the work goes back to Sam Bowles and those economists, the conflicted economy perspective, conflictive exchange, I think they call it. But it's just fantastic. I'm a little bit lost for words, and I cannot tell you how happy this makes, how much I value your respect as a group. So thanks very, very much. Are we there? Matthias, you need to unmute.
Esteban, go ahead. I unmuted you.
Have to unmute.
Esteban is muted.
I did unmute you.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to relay one anecdote that Mark Lavoie wrote about Tom Paley, and I'm quoting here. He says, "I remember one anecdote when I was attending the conference in the honor of Thomas Asikomopoulos at Bar College in 1992. Peter Howitt, who had been a student of Asikomopoulos at McGill University, was a guest of honor and made the usual presentation about the usefulness of tight monetary policy and inflation fighting based on some neoclassical model that endorsed the high cost of inflation. Our best known post-Keynesian economists, Ed Nell and Paul Davidson, among others, remained silent and did not make any objection, but very courageously, right beside me, Tom rose up and challenged Howitt's views in no uncertain terms. I was very much impressed by Tom and his arguments at the time, especially that he did not yet have tenure and that Howard was very likely candidate for an external, not post-Keynesian, but possibly to post-Keynesian evaluator. So, just wanted to read that. Thank you.
Thank you, Esteban. Well, I think that this concludes our 10th anniversary, meeting. It was great to have you all. It was great to listen to Professor Temin. It was great to see you all. Again, it was good to have a celebration, not just about the journal, but about the community and in that community, particularly Tom, that you have played an important role for all of us.
So we call it a day.
Well, I hope to see you all, guys. By the way, there will be sessions at the Eastern Economic Association. Stiglitz will give the Godley-Tobin lecture, and some of the papers that will come in the Festschrift will be presented, with Tom and several of us there. So we could probably go out for a good bottle of wine or a beer after that.
Okay. Okay. Bye. Congratulations, Tom, again.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Ignacio.
Bye. Bye.